CeeDee Lamb and Tee Higgins are both top starts on Monday Night Football this week. We dig into and debate our wide receiver and tight end fantasy rankings for Week 14 on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. We're here for you every day, Monday through Friday, helping you win your fantasy football leagues. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. All right, it is time to get into our wide receiver and tight end rankings today. If you missed yesterday's show, we've already dug into our running back and quarterback rankings, so go listen to that afterwards if you missed it. Now, let's just start right at the top here for our wide receivers. Very similar at the top. Jamar Chase, A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Justin Jefferson are both inside our top four guys, right? It's slightly different, but we love them all this week. No shock there. You have Mike Evans at wide receiver 5. I am at wide receiver 7. Love him this week. I have Puka at number 5. You have him at 8. Again, great play. But one guy I want to hit on is CeeDee Lamb because you have him at wide receiver 6. Now, I also like him this week at wide receiver 8, but I think we need to discuss that because he's been up and down. He hasn't had a big week since week 8, and last week was atrocious for him. So why are you expecting a big week from him in this matchup against the Bengals?
Yeah, they've had some time to get into this game, and you look at CeeDee Lamb, he kind of has to be a bit motivated to play. And right now it's a difficult situation for him to go out there and say, I'm going to go catch 10 balls for 150 yards. Like, that's just not his mindset here. Not only the Cowboys are in a bad spot, but the Bengals secondary is beatable on the inside as well. And you figure there's going to be a lot of volume here with Cooper Rush because you have Joe Burrow on the other side. He's going to light up the Cowboys. You figure Rush is going to have to throw quite a bit. He really hasn't thrown to too many guys, right? It's the tight end, whoever that might be. Luke Schoonmaker's had a little bit better chemistry than Jake Ferguson. We'll see if Ferguson returns, but it's been the underneath stuff, Rico Dowdle, all that stuff. So Lamb, I think they'll adjust a little bit and throw some shorter routes to him. So it could be one of those games where he's averaging like 9 or 10 yards a catch, something like really low, but I think he has a good chance of scoring this game. So again, it's week to week on CD on how much he's going to be motivated. But I think this week, maybe the Cowboys have a little bit of energy. They've won a couple games. They've had some time to rest. Maybe it's like, okay, we have a shot here. Let me play a little bit better this week. And they have a shot to beat the Bengals. So I think that'll help Lamb as well.
Yeah, the Bengals, he should be able to do it against them, even with Cooper Rush. Like, everyone has been able to put up big numbers against the Bengals. Now, they are so bad against the tight end. We'll get to that later. So maybe that hurts Lamb a little bit, but I don't think so. He should have a big game. Now, the touchdown is what comes into play, right? If he can finish top 10 or not, but hopefully he can come down with one in this game. Now, the player I have at wide receiver 6 is Tee Higgins. You're slightly lower on him at wide receiver 14. He's been a beast. Like, he looks so good. I know he's had issues with injuries this year, and that's the big worry about any team that's going to pay him next year, right? But he is playing for a contract. I think he looks so good out there, and he's getting so many targets whenever he is healthy on the field. But since he's come back from injury the last 2 games, 13 targets, 10 targets, has a touchdown in each of his last 3 games, 5 touchdowns over his last 5 games. Like, he looks so incredible. And when they get near the goal line, Joe Burrow is looking for Tee Higgins because he's such a tall man. And he's going to come down with it. I love Tee Higgins. And as long as he's healthy, I think he's a top 10 option.
Yeah, Tee Higgins has kind of just made it a 2-man show with him and Jamar Chase, and Chase Brown kind of is the add-on crossing over to the running game here. But yeah, Mike Gesicki, the tight ends, they've had some injuries there. Those guys have disappeared. You occasionally have a play from Andreas Voss or one of the other receivers, but it's really about these 2 receivers, and it's really funneled to them quite a bit. And Higgins, everyone's saying, is he going to check out the rest of the season? No, he's not, because if the Bengals are not signing him, he's going to go after another team, and he needs to make himself look as attractive as possible. It's a weird thing because Jamar Chase needs a contract too, so he's kind of needing his share a little bit with Chase to go in that direction. But right now, I don't see the Bengals keeping him. That's going to be really hard to pay Chase and Higgins at the exact same time. They're not the most open money organization. I'll leave it at that. And they look at the draft. They're going to have some options here to replace Tee Higgins. So again, enjoy Tee Higgins while you've got it. I think he'll be good wherever he goes next year. And whoever replaces Higgins is immediately on the fantasy radar here next to Chase next season.
I personally think the Bengals should be paying them both, but they already have an atrocious defense. So get rid of what high-paying defenders you have because they're atrocious, and focus on the draft through defense and keep your two true great players that you have. That's a discussion for later. We both have George Pickens as top 9 play. You have him 7, I have him 9. We both have Cooper Kupp relatively high. You have him 9, I have him 11. Drake London, you have him 10, I have him 12. Now, 2 guys that we differ on, though, you have both Tyreek Hill and Malik Neighbors inside your top 12. I do not. Now, it's not like I have them buried. I have Malik Neighbors at 16. I have Tyreek Hill at 17. My issue is just they haven't been doing much, right? Malik Neighbors is getting so many targets, but the efficiency is terrible with the quarterback play, and he hasn't scored a touchdown since week 3. Like, that insane. And then Tyreek Hill accidentally scored a touchdown last week. It wasn't to him. It got tipped up into him. But and the Jets, they haven't been as good of a defense who Tyreek Hill is facing, but they're still allowing the fewest points per game to wide receivers this season. It's just not as dominant as it was last year. So that's why I'm a bit lower on those 2 guys. Why are they in your top 12?
Well, it's starting to become clear to me that Tua Tagovailoa prefers to throw mainly to Tyreek Hill and Jonnu Smith. Now, he had that one game with Jalen Waddle, but these are 2 guys they want to get open. These guys are both middle of the field type guys as well. So you can move Tyreek Hill in the slot. I mean, the Jets have strangely not been as good on the outside. I mean, Sauce Gardner has given up quite a bit this year. So they're a little bit better inside, but I think they'll move around Hill. Their effort is kind of questionable with the Jets at this point. So if you get him in space in the open field, he can make some big things happen after the catch. Now, that's the nature of how the Dolphins offense is operating. So again, Tyreek Hill, I've had a little bit more faith in him, what he's done the last 2 weeks. I know maybe a bit fluky with the way it came through, but we know he's still pretty high leverage. And with Malik Neighbors, look, the Saints secondary is not very good, and they lost Marshawn Lattimore. They've had some injuries back there. So I think this gives Neighbors a chance. We'll see who ends up starting at quarterback in this one. But when I look at that Saints matchup, I think there's a good chance to get going because I like it at home, and the Saints do give up some big plays.
I hope so. I have Malik Neighbors in a huge league that I need to win this week, and I need him to have a touchdown because it's a stupid standard league. But besides the point, now one wide receiver I'm a little bit higher on than you. It's Calvin Ridley. I am wide receiver 10. That's very high for Calvin Ridley. You have a wide receiver 15, which is also relatively high for Calvin Ridley. Just an amazing matchup against the Jaguars. And Ridley has had 2 huge games since DeAndre Hopkins has been traded. So it's not like we haven't seen them. Another 2 really solid games with over 70 receiving yards. But we know the Jaguars are so bad against wide receivers. And then also the revenge game aspect has been like real this year, right? Like we saw Stephon Diggs against the Vikings have a huge game. Jerry Jeudy, obviously last week against the Broncos, lighted up. DJ Moore against the Panthers. Like it's in their heads. And Calvin Ridley didn't get paid like he wanted to with the Jaguars, and he had to leave and go to the Titans. So I do think there's something there. And I really like Calvin Ridley this week.
Yeah, I think revenge games come much more into play with wide receivers because they're a bit diva sorts where they're take everything personally. They've got somewhat of an ego. And this was right. I mean, when you look at it, it was one and done for Calvin Ridley. Like they didn't give him an opportunity to maybe develop more with Trevor Lawrence and have that opportunity. Now he gets into another offense with a budding young quarterback and Will Levis. He's been pretty good. I know he's not the scoring machine that Nick Westbrook-Akina is. And I think this offense, again, watch out for it next year. We talked about Will Levis as sleeper. I think they'll add a 3rd receiver into this mix to play off these guys. And then you're talking. Then you're cooking with gas a little bit around the skill set. And keep in mind, they also have an offensive coordinator who came from the Jaguars. So he's going to try to scheme Ridley open a little bit for his sake as well. So I do like Ridley doing really well, making big plays all over the field here. And I think him and Westbrook-Akina have good days that add up to why we like Will Levis in the top 10 this week.
Now, 2 guys that have had big weeks, DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. They've both been doing it up the last 2 weeks, right? Keenan Allen with all the touchdowns. DJ Moore is getting so many targets and a lot of receiving yards. Now, it looks like a great game against the 49ers because their defense hasn't been as good. They've been so bad against the run, though. It's really not against they've only allowed one wide receiver to score more than 10 fantasy points against them over the last 4 games. And that was JSN with 11 targets in that game. I do think DJ Moore is still a good play, like a solid play. Keenan Allen, on the other hand, though, I don't think I'm going to chase his touchdowns in this matchup. I think they can run all over the 49ers if they want to, and they're still okay against the pass.
Yeah, I think the game script might push the Bears out of this. I'm not saying the 49ers have this dominant offense anymore the way it is right now, but you figure they're going to control a little bit more action at home. Now, I also don't see the Bears being just a pounded team, right? They want to see a little bit more what Caleb Williams can do. And by trusting him a little bit to chuck the ball, you've seen the better results here with Thomas Brown, another change at OC, but they're going to keep the same philosophy, let him loose to do the things that he wants to do. And with Keenan Allen, what I like about him is he's realized his quarterback needs him. And they've stepped up to say, okay, why weren't we using Keenan Allen? This guy gets open all the time in the middle of the field. I think what you're going to get from Keenan Allen is like maybe 10 receptions for like 95 or 100 yards. That I could see that game. And then DJ Moore makes a big play touchdown. But what I like about it is they're not going to mess around with Cole Kmet if they have to worry about Fred Warner. They're not going to force in Roma Denze if he's not ready. So I think a lot of the targets are going to be going through these two guys and DeAndre Swift. And it's a little bit easier, I think. I finally have a good read on the Bears offense with some consistency here and what they want to do with Williams that I was not getting early in the season when Shane Waldron was still the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, DJ Moore. I feel much better about DJ Moore than Keenan Allen, but overall, I think we could have a disappointing week from this Bears passing offense. Now, one guy we haven't named yet is Jerry Jeudy, who finished as a wide receiver 1 this past week. I still have him pretty high. I'm wide receiver 14. You don't even have him in your top 24. So we got to talk about that. Let's take a quick break, and then I'll grill you for your decision making on Jerry Jeudy's rankings. We will be right back.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It's America's #1 sportsbook for a reason, because you get the best action there. And this is a good time to get in on the NFL action because it's week 14. We're almost near the end of the season. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets with a winning bet. 1 or 2 bets, actually, like with the Thursday night game. I do like that Packers plus 3.5 there. I think they can keep it close and stay in the game. And I also like the 51.5 for the point total. I like it be over there as well. So I expect some points here, which is what we want for fantasy football, but it's also good for getting on the betting action. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and see much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started again with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's only at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
History, economics, the great works of literature, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution. Did you study these things in school? Probably not. Or even if you did, maybe it's time for a refresher. Time and technology have changed a lot of things, but they have not changed basic fundamental truths about the world and our place in it. Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses. Some of those courses include the Constitution 101, the meaning and history of the Constitution, Introduction to Free Market Economics, the rise and fall of the Roman Republic, and a brand new documentary style course on Marxism, socialism, and communism. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or even just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/locked-on to enroll. There's no cost and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/locked-on to register. hillsdale.edu/locked-on. So you got to explain your Jerry Jeudy ranking, Vinny. He's been on fire. He's been getting the targets. Now he does get a tougher Steelers defense, but he did just have, 6 receptions, 85 yards. He caught all of his 6 targets against the Steelers in the snow game. So explain yourself.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Jerry Jeudy is just one of those guys that when you think, oh, we're in business with Jerry Jeudy, it's going to come crashing down. And I think, look, it might be a little bit more of a gut. I know the Steelers secondary, when you look at the 3 guys, aren't just shut down. They're okay, right? I would say they're average, but nothing special that you get from them in coverage. Okay, that's one thing. But I just think the Steelers we're going to say it's enough is enough here. I mean, this is just ridiculous that I get it. The Broncos' pass defense was good, and Jameis Winston carved them up, but I think this is just kind of a thing waiting to crash at one point. And there's just too much volatility that I don't love. I mean, you can take a shot on Jerry Jeudy. I think I don't have him totally out of playing range. I have him actually at 36. So you could play him as the last wide receiver 3. That's why I did that on purpose, because if you need him, you're there. But I also wanted to show that I'm not going to chase his game, and he's not going to do anything close to what he did last week. So, again, he's just a guy, like, if you put him in your lineup, you're going to probably be disappointed. If you keep him out, he's probably going to go off. So that's just the way it is with Jerry Jeudy. And again, I've been annoyed with this guy because I think he has talent and he's shown that, but he just is so inconsistent. You can never trust him. And this week it could be Elijah Moore. It could be him doing the damage and then Jeudy taking a back seat. So, and I also don't see that many targets from Jameis Winston. I don't know if they're going to have the ball enough to do that this week. So, yeah, I'm out on Jerry Jeudy this week, and luckily I don't have to make that decision because he's not on any of my teams.
He's been really good. I mean, it's been 5 straight weeks of good production, but I hope you're right, because as a Steelers fan, I hope they can stop him. Now, we have 2 guys. I just feel like they play very similarly and they can put up similar numbers or completely disappear, and that's Jackson Smith-Njigba against the Cardinals. Or you got Devonta Smith coming back from a hamstring injury. It looks like he's going to officially be back against the Panthers. If you're choosing between those 2, do you like them both this week? Do you like one well more than the other? Like, what are your feelings on these guys? Because, we finally saw JSN's targets go down after some huge weeks.
Yeah, these guys are just hard to read. I mean, their usage is very inconsistent sometimes, and we don't get it. Like Devonta Smith in particular, right? He can catch a big play touchdown. He can disappear from the game completely or be involved consistently. I think being in and out of the lineup has hurt, as well as Jalen Hurts hasn't been as consistent throwing the ball this year. So that's kind of hurt Devonta Smith as we've gone along. So he's just more of a boomer bust player. I thought A.J. Brown was that player, but now I think Smith is that player right now because of his big play dependency. And how much will they need him? We don't know. They'll probably go nuts running against the Panthers. I know my Jalen Hurts ranking is tied to him doing some running and scoring. I don't know if the passing volume is going to be all that high against the worst run defense in the NFL and having the best running back in the NFL of the season, Saquon Barkley. So if I had to go with one, I would go Jackson Smith-Njigba. I just think that game, the Cardinals should be more in control this time around, and that'll open up some easy targets for JSN. So I'm going JSN if I had to go there. If I'm looking for upside, Devonta Smith, again, it's just hard with that hamstring injury how he will respond and do that.
I like both this week. I have JSN at wide receiver 13. I have Devonta Smith at wide receiver 22. I might end up moving him up though, because you brought up they should just be able to run all over the Panthers, but Dallas Goedert is going to be out, right?
Yeah.
It looks like it anyways. And when Dallas Goedert is out, Devonta Smith actually can do something. It's like when all 3 play, it's just A.J. Brown, right? But if one of them is missing, then the other 2 can do something. So I do kind of like Devonta Smith in this matchup. Now, what about Brian Thomas Jr.? He's had 2 back-to-back weeks with at least 75 receiving yards. He got that touchdown last week. He got 10 targets last week with Mac Jones. Well, I guess half and half with Trevor Lawrence and Mac Jones. Does he have upside, right? Like the floor we know is low with Mac Jones. Does he have upside with him? And I guess it is a nice matchup against Titans.
Yeah, and this is going to be the reverse revenge game, if you will. The guy who replaces the guy is often motivated as well to show what he can do and show the team. But you don't need to do that really with Brian Thomas Jr. He's just an alpha talent. You're seeing that happen here. I think he's been trying to prove all throughout the season as a rookie that he's a lot more than a big play threat outside. And he's had to be, right? Because Mac Jones is not going to hit him that way. So I think just based on volume alone, Thomas is a very good play. And I think he's always got upside because he can score a touchdown. He's got that body. You can always take one broken coverage and take it to the house. So I think he does have more upside. And that's when you look at these guys, I think Thomas is steadier, right? We talked about Smith-Njigba and Smith. They're a little bit more volatile, where I think Thomas has a high floor and he has a high ceiling this week.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the high ceiling. The high floor, I don't know about, but he is going to get the targets. And you can't run against the Titans. They're pretty good against that. And the Jaguars have no run game. So Mac Jones is going to have to throw a lot, and it's going to go to Brian Thomas. And hopefully he can be efficient with it. One guy who's not efficient at all with his target share, it's Garrett Wilson. He's getting all the targets, not all of them, but he's getting a lot of targets. And he's finished as the wide receiver 42, 66, and 53 over his last 3 games played. I personally, I think this is bold to say, I would rather go with the big play guys where you just need one big play to outscore Garrett Wilson. They don't get the targets like Garrett Wilson, but guys like Jameson Williams or Nick Westbrook-Ikhine who can't stop scoring touchdowns, or even Marquez Valdes-Scantling, like, is it crazy to go after those guys who get like maybe 3 receptions in the game, but they matter so much more than Garrett Wilson's 10 targets?
Yeah, and you have to watch this matchup. I mean, I had him as one of the last startable wide receiver 2s, only because he's Garrett Wilson. But in terms of liking this matchup, I think it could be a total bust here because Jalen Ramsey's actually played really well of late. You figure that's where you're going to see the coverage because Devontae Adams actually is playing like 35% of the slot. I think it's like 20 something like percent for Wilson doing that. So that means Adams probably has the better matchup. We know what Rodgers was doing last week. That's my concern too. Is he just greasing Devontae Adams, toying with the Jets offense a little bit, knowing what's going on in the future? So that's my one concern. So I think I would try to sit him. Again, you just have to know that going in. Okay, you're going to give up the volume. Could he have 6 for 70 and get through it? Could one of these other guys totally bust out and be terrible? Yes. But just look at your team. I think sometimes you have to look at that too. How do you feel about the other 2 wide receivers you're starting? Do you feel like you can take a chance on this spot? Are you playing a team that you are an underdog to? Do you need a little bit more upside? So these are little things you factor into your lineup decisions, but Wilson overall, if I had the depth, I would try not to play him this week.
Yeah. I mean, MVS we're seeing is offensive snaps increase each week with the team. We're seeing him score a touchdown every week. The targets really aren't going up, but touchdowns are still there. And we know, like Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, you just have to keep playing the hot hand until he shows you he's not going to score anymore. Like he just keeps scoring, and the matchup is too amazing against the Jaguars not to trust that he's going to keep doing it this week. Last question for you when it comes to wide receivers. If Ladd McConkey does miss, they're being kind of like not very telling about his injury, but I feel like he's pretty doubtful. Is there a wide receiver on the Chargers that you'd be interested in starting, either in Quentin Johnson, who's done absolutely nothing the last couple of weeks, or Josh Palmer, who's really done nothing all season long, but would Palmer kind of go into that Ladd McConkey role?
Yeah, I think if there is one guy, they would probably put Palmer there because I think he can make the transition there and work the inside. He has some decent games in the past against the Chiefs too, filling in for Mike Williams and other guys, right? So there's some history. He's the veteran there. I would think they would trust him in that role a little bit more. It's just so hard. I mean, this could also be a big bump for Will Dissly and the usage on the inside routes as well. The Chiefs stink at those. So I think they just need to look at who has the better chance of getting open a little bit against these corners against the Chiefs. And then you say Palmer, a little bit savvy. Quentin Johnson's a little bit more vertical, a little bit more of a size, speed-dependent guy, where Palmer has maybe a little bit more trust here overall from Justin Herbert. So I would slightly lean Palmer if you were desperate to go in that direction.
Yeah, it's like you play in a 3 wide receiver. Like you have to start 3 wide receivers, and it's deep, and that's kind of desperation play you're going with there. We're going to transition over to our tight ends, and we think the greatest, the guy that will get the most benefit from Ladd McConkey being out is Will Dissly, who we both have ranked very high this week. We will discuss him and the rest of our tight end rankings right after a quick break. With big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. Say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You even get to use your own phone, bring your own phone number, along with all your existing contacts with any Mint Mobile plan. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedonnfl. $45 upfront payment required, which is equivalent to the $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. All right, before we get into Will Disley, I want to just hit on Jonnu Smith really, really quick because he has been fantastic, and it's about time we start ranking him consistently, I think, high. You have him at tight end 4 this week. I have him at tight end 5, only behind Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, Travis Kelce, and George Kittle. Like elite names, right? Jonnu Smith is getting an absurd amount of targets. He's been productive on them too, so there's no reason to go away from it. And the Jets have good corners, so they might need to use Jonnu Smith in this matchup.
Yeah, Jonnu Smith has been a great story this year because, again, he had this kind of athletic upside with the Titans, and then they didn't quite use him the right way in the Patriots. I don't know what they were doing with him. He can stay on the field there, that situation. But you're seeing his talent manifest. And we thought early in the season, could he be one of those trick guys, a hybrid fullback tight end type person that they use on some red zone packages? Okay, that we thought that could happen. But now he's become an integral part to what Tua Tagovailoa is doing in the passing game. So you can't ignore that. And I thought at one point, and this is the funny thing, is I thought when Mike McDaniel went there that Mike Gesicki would be a bigger thing, right? Because he used the tight end and he learned from how Kyle Shanahan was using George Kittle. So I thought that was going to be a thing, but maybe they just didn't like him in that role, right? Because Gesicki, look, he doesn't have the same athleticism as Jonnu Smith. Let's just say that. And so Jonnu has been kind of undervalued, untapped, and you got to credit McDaniel for using him and unlocking him a bit there as a key target, realizing, look, we need a third guy with Waddle and Hill to be reliable. So I think it continues. Again, it's a tough matchup for those receivers. So Jonnu should be there. And like he's kind of become the Nick Westbrook Akine of tight ends. There's a good chance he's going to score in this game as well.
Yeah, Jonnu Smith's been the tight end 2, 3, and 3 over the last
Jeez.
3 weeks. Now we also have we both have TJ Hawkinson as our tight end 6. We both have David Njoku at tight end 7, but I might end up actually moving him down. Sam Laporta, I have at 8, you have at 10. But let's talk about Will Disley, who I might be switching out with David Njoku here because I think I like him better. He gets an amazing matchup against the Chiefs. I know that it's only been 2 big games for him this year, but when he is targeted, he looks good, right? Justin Herbert and him look really good over the middle when they do connect. It's been, again, like I said, 2 big games. The rest of them have been terrible for him in fantasy, but this matchup is like the best you can get. The Chiefs are allowing over 120 more receiving yards to tight ends than any other team this year.
Yeah, some reason they get lost and they struggle. You knew Brock Bowers was a go-to guy for the Raiders, but they did not know where to line up to cover him on the Black Friday game. So I think Disley is another guy that they can scheme open pretty well. Greg Roman can do that. I expect they might upgrade tight end next year. We'll see. They might be happy with what Disley's doing, but we know it's a Greg Roman offense. So it's kind of like, okay, we know the 49ers type offense with McDaniel eventually is going to use the tight end. You knew Greg Roman's offense is going to use a tight end at some point. It just took a while. Disley has been a guy, like he came up actually as a blocker potentially with the Seahawks. Then he showed a little bit extra juice, so they put him out on receiving situations, but they didn't throw to the tight end. So the bottom line is he has to get the targets. He has to be out there. And would I feel less comfortable if Ladd McConkey wasn't hurt? No. But I like the fact that the matchup is great and they're going to have to throw to him inside. So that's what adds up to me as a starting viable tight end day for him, or night, I should say, on Sunday night.
Now, we need to discuss how high we're going to have Jake Ferguson if he's officially back. Now, it does look like he's trending towards playing. He was back at practice yesterday. They don't play till Monday night, so that kind of stinks, but we should know by Sunday. Like, he's going to either be cleared or not. It's a concussion. It's not like it's anything else. It's a concussion. You're either going to be cleared to play or you're not. And if he's cleared to play, I think I know Luke Schoonmaker has been really solid with Ferguson's absence, but I think Ferguson gets his job right back. The Bengals have allowed a tight end to score at least 15 fantasy points in allowed 7 tight ends to score at least 15 fantasy points over the last 8 games. Mark Andrews, Pat Freiermuth, and Will Disley all scored at least 18 points against them over the last 3 games. So it's an amazing matchup. And we know that Cooper Rush likes his tight ends. I think Jake Ferguson is a top tier play if he's out there.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely lines up well with the way that Cooper Rush is operating the offense. Now, the question is, does Cooper Rush have better chemistry with Luke Schoonmaker? Will they take that into account a little bit? Will they use both of them at some point? That's also a concern, right? Knowing that the matchup is good. But again, I think it's worth a shot this week. If Ferguson plays, I think I go right back to looking at him this week. And as Michelle's pointed out, and I have too, when you look at the tight end numbers at this time of the year, they simply do not change. They are what they are. These teams, for whatever reason, giving up those points to the tight ends. It is the second most reliable thing after rushing yards allowed by these teams to fantasy points allowed and all that good stuff. So again, I've always noticed this at tight ends. I mean, it's a better indicator. So usually use that to your advantage this late in the year when you have 13 weeks of data points.
We both have Evan Ingram and Kyle Pitts for a low in our rankings. And Evan Ingram doesn't get a nice matchup. Also, his efficiency has been terrible. And he has Mac Jones. And there's just so many things against him. But only 4 tight ends have scored even 8 points against the Titans this season. And only one of those guys did it without scoring a touchdown. Evan Ingram has 1 touchdown on the year. He's never been a touchdown scorer. So betting on a touchdown from him, it could happen. Anything could happen. It's just not a very high probability. I do not want to play Evan Ingram this week. And Kyle Pitts, this guy, just coaches have to hate him. Like, I don't know what goes on, but they refuse to use him. And he has 1 reception for 9 yards over his last 2 games.
I don't know how this is possible, but I have a team with 1 loss, and I've been starting Kyle Pitts every week because there's no depth on the thing. I just plug him in. I guess, I just need to work around a 0 this week. Like, I just expect him to have the lowest floor possible. And like, if I got 3 catches for 40 yards from Kyle Pitts, I'll be thrilled. Look, I don't know what happened there. I thought the chemistry was going to be better with Kirk Cousins and the usage. Instead, they're throwing to Ray McLeod more at this rate. I mean, they're using him more than Kyle Pitts, a first-round tight end. So maybe, again, Arthur Smith, maybe he wasn't to blame. Maybe it's some of the players here and their consistency and reliability. And look, last week was a brutal matchup. Derwin James was a man possessed last week. Like, he was very hard to stop. But I think there's a little bit of an opening this week. The Vikings, we'll see. Maybe there's an overcorrection. What I'm hoping for, Michelle, is what we might need is Kirk Cousins being benched for Michael Penix Jr. Will that help my team down the stretch? I don't know. But I'm going to keep looking for tight end options. I picked up Schoonmakers and all these things to do that. So, but Kyle Pitts, like, I don't know if there's been a more disappointing player. And really, I look at him, Dalton Kincaid, first-round picks in reality, just not coming through. I do not get why these teams take this tight end in the first round and not throw to him. Look, that was happening with David Njoku early in his career. Now it's completely flipped here. So maybe that'll happen at some point, but I don't have a lot of faith. And Kyle Pitts, again, he continues to be one of the more disappointing players in reality and fantasy.
Yeah, I will say, like, it's very similar to what I was talking about with the big play guy over the target guy. So, like, Evan Ingram gets the targets. I mean, Kyle Pitts could some games and then completely disappears. But Chigoziem Okonkwo is that guy that could have a sneaky big play this week against the Jaguars. Jaguars are allowing the 6th most points per game to tight ends. Chig came down with a 70-yard touchdown 2 weeks ago, almost came down with another long touchdown this past week, had 6 targets, which was a season high for him this last week. So I do think we could see a big play for him. That's what you need. Like, it's going to have to be that one big play touchdown because he's not going to, like, give you a ton of production overall. But I might rather just go with that over a guy like Pitts or Ingram this week. That is it for today's episode. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Everydayers, we'll be back tomorrow to dig into our favorite sleeper of the week at each position and then start our daily fantasy talk, which is always a fun time. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Enjoy the Thursday night game. Bye, y'all.